I never thought the day would come when I'd stare down the barrel of my own blood's betrayal. But there I was, finger hovering over the send button that would unravel their empire like a house of cards in a Chicago gale. My parents, the golden couple of Midwest real estate, had just confessed over a forced family dinner that they'd rescued my fledgling artisanal coffee roastery by poaching my suppliers and undercutting my prices. All to toughen me up, they said, with that smug Midwestern grin that masked their cutthroat souls. What they didn't know, what I'd buried deeper than the family secrets that scarred my childhood, was that I owned every bean, every warehouse, every shadowy deal that fueled their so-called salvation. It started 6 months earlier, in the sticky heat of a July afternoon in 2025, when the air in Wicker Park hung thick with the scent of overbrewed espresso and unfulfilled dreams. I'd poured my life into Beanstalk Brews, a small-batch roastery squeezed between a tattoo parlor and a vegan bookstore on Damon Avenue. At 32, I was Avery Hayes, the black sheep who'd clawed her way out of the shadow of my parents' sprawling empire, Hayes Developments, the kind of firm that turned cornfields into cookie-cutter McMansions and downtown lots into luxury lofts. Mom and Dad, Eleanor and Richard Hayes, were the undisputed kings of the Windy City's property game, their faces plastered on billboards promising the American dream, delivered.
But to me,
they were the architects of my nightmares. The ones who'd forced me to take the fall for Dad's embezzlement scheme back when I was 18, just to keep their golden reputations intact. That old wound, it never healed. I'd confessed to fudging the books on a minor development project, a lie they scripted, word for word, in our sun-drenched kitchen while Mom sipped Chardonnay and Dad paced like a caged wolf. "It's for the family, Avery," he'd growled, his breath reeking of scotch. "You do this, and we'll make sure you get into that Ivy League safety school. Refuse, and we'll disown you faster than you can say foreclosure." I did it. Spent 6 months in a juvenile diversion program. My college dreams deferred. My name muddied in legal whispers that followed me like exhaust fumes. They got off scot-free. Of course, connections, lawyers, the whole greased palm machine of American privilege. I rebuilt in silence, dropping out of community college to hustle barista gigs, then scraping together seed money from late-night poetry slams and odd jobs. Beanstalk was my middle finger to them all, organic. Fair trade beans sourced from forgotten co-ops in Colombia and Ethiopia, roasted in a vintage drum machine that hummed like a heartbeat. But success? It crept up slow, like fog off Lake Michigan. By spring, we'd hit 50 wholesale clients, hipster cafes from Milwaukee to Indy, all raving about our ethereal notes of bergamot and dark chocolate. Revenue ticked up to $200,000 a quarter, enough to hire 2 baristas and dream of expansion. That's when they showed up, unannounced, like locusts in Brooks Brothers attire. "Avery, darling," Mom cooed, sweeping into the roastery in a cloud of Chanel no. 5 and condescension, her pearl necklace glinting like a noose. Dad trailed behind, arms crossed over his barrel chest, surveying the exposed brick walls and chalkboard menu like he was appraising a teardown. "We've been hearing such buzz. Thought we'd pop in, see how our little girl's faring in the big bad world of beans." I forced a smile, wiping grounds from my hands onto my apron. "It's not little anymore,
Mom.
We're projecting 30% growth this fiscal." Dad chuckled, that low rumble that always set my teeth on edge. "Growth? Honey, in this economy, real estate's tanking with these EV charging mandates, screwing up parking ratios. But coffee? That's a fad. We know markets. Avery, let us help. Help." The words slithered out like a bad omen. They helped by introducing me to their network, old cronies from the Chicago Board of Trade, realtors with deep pockets and deeper appetites. Orders poured in, fat contracts for office lounges in their latest high-rises. But something fell off. Deliveries lagged, costs spiked inexplicably, and whispers reached me from suppliers. Hayes Developments is sniffing around, offering triple our rate if we reroute to their new venture. Their new venture. Apex Aroma. They called it, a boutique supplier launching with fanfare at the Taste of Chicago Festival. I saw the ads first, sleek packaging mimicking mine. Taglines like "Brew the Elite Life" that echoed my own pitch deck from 2 years back. Worse. The beans? Identical profiles. Down to the single origin Yirgacheffe I'd sourced exclusively through a shell company I'd set up in Delaware, Shadow Harvest LLC. Unbeknownst to anyone, even my accountant, Shadow Harvest was mine. I'd bootstrapped it 3 years prior, funneling profits from freelance graphic design into offshore deals and warehouse leases in Gary, Indiana. It was my insurance policy, my hidden ace: control the supply chain, and no one could choke you out. Rage simmered low at first, a bitter undercurrent to my morning pour-overs. But when Apex underbid my contracts by 40%, poaching the lion's share of my clients with introductory incentives that smelled of desperation, it boiled over. I confronted them at their Gold Coast penthouse, the one overlooking the glittering loop where Dad had once joked about pushing rivals off the balcony. "You stole my suppliers," I said, voice steady as I slid printouts across the Marble Island, emails, invoices, the paper trail I'd pieced together from late nights hunched over QuickBooks. Shadow Harvest? That's my company. Every sack of beans Apex is slinging came from my warehouses. Mom's martini glass paused midair, her Botox-smooth forehead creasing for the first time in a decade. "Darling, that's preposterous. We're just facilitating. The market's cutthroat. We taught you that." Dad leaned forward, eyes narrowing to slits. "Shadow Harvest? Never heard of it. But if it's yours, why hide it? Sounds like you're the one playing games."
Lies.
Brazen, polished lies, delivered with the same conviction they'd used to coach me through that courtroom confession 14 years ago. That night, as I drove back to my Logan Square walk-up in the pouring rain, wipers slapping like accusations, the plan crystallized. Revenge wasn't an outburst, it was a slow roast, dark and unrelenting. I'd let them think they'd won, feed their hubris until it choked them. But first, I needed proof, irrefutable, courtroom-grade evidence of not just theft, but the deeper rot, how they'd leveraged my old juvie record to smear me in supplier negotiations, whispering to co-ops that Avery Hayes can't be trusted with contracts, family history of fraud. You know, the digging started innocuous, a burner phone for anonymous tips to industry forums, stirring the pot on Reddit's r/small business with veiled posts about parental sabotage in the craft food scene. Replies flooded in, tales of nepotism, cutthroat kin, the American family as the ultimate Shark Tank. It fueled me, that chorus of invisible allies. Then came the real work, hiring a PI, a grizzled ex-cop named Harlan from a Pilsen dive bar, who owed me a favor from a bar fight I'd talked down years back. Harlan delivered gold. Tapes of Dad schmoozing suppliers over steak at Morton's. "Look, the kid's got potential, but she's green. We can guarantee volume, Hayes volume, if you cut her out." And yeah, that juvie thing? Water under the bridge. But banks get twitchy. Mom's emails to their lawyers, strategizing how to fold Beanstalk into Apex as a subsidiary. For her own good. The betrayal cut deeper than the theft. It was erasure. Them rewriting my story as their footnote. By September, Apex was booming. Their stalls at farmers' markets drawing lines longer than my roasteries ever seen. They threw a launch party at the 312 Club. All crystal chandeliers and jazz trio. Inviting industry friends, which meant everyone but me. I crashed it anyway. Slipping in through the service entrance in a borrowed sheath dress. Hair pinned up like I belonged. There they were, toasting with my beans in flutes of champagne. Dad's arm around Mom as he regaled a cluster of venture capitalists with tales of disrupting the bean game. I waited until the speeches, microphone in hand like a loaded gun. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, voice amplified over the murmur. "Let's raise a glass to family. To the Hayes legacy, built on secrets, sustained by sacrifice. Did you know Apex Aroma's secret ingredient is betrayal? Every bean traces back to Beanstalk brews. Stolen wholesale by the very hands that claim to nurture." Gasps rippled. Dad's face drained of color. Mom's smile fracturing like thin ice. Security hovered. But the damage was sown, phones out. Videos rolling. The viral hum starting before I even hit the exit. Outside. In the alley stink of garbage and garlic from the kitchens. Harlan met me with a nod. "Got the files uploading to a secure Dropbox. Your call now." My call. The revenge pivot. Instead of suing outright, too clean, too American Dream redemption arc, I went darker. I activated Shadow Harvest's kill switch, halting shipments to Apex. But not before accidentally contaminating a batch with low-grade fillers. The kind that'd trigger FDA flags for mislabeling. Nothing lethal. Just enough to spark recalls. Lawsuits from jittery clients. Simultaneously, I leaked the PI tapes to a podcast buddy on Windy City whistleblowers, framing it as dynastic drama in the Heartland hustle. The fallout was symphony. Apex stock, yeah. They'd gone public in a cheeky SPAC deal, tumbled 25% overnight. Protests erupted outside Hayes Development's HQ. Signs reading "Family First" or "Fist." Mom called. Voice shrill through tears. "Avery, what have you done? We're ruined." Dad followed with voicemails. Alternating fury and feigned contrition. "Come home.
Kid.
Let's talk. We were wrong. Proud of you. Even.
Proud."
The word twisted like a knife. I let it fester. Playing the long game. By October, with Beanstalk surging on the sympathy wave, free PR from every local news outlet, I proposed a merger. Public olive branch. I told my board. All wide-eyed millennials who'd bought my underdog pitch hook,
Line.
and sinker. Terms: I take majority stake in the combined entity, rebranded as Roots and Rebels Roasters. They accepted. Desperate. Egos bruised but wallets weeping. Closing was at their lawyer's office in the Aeon Center. Skyline sprawling like a conquered kingdom. We signed amid small talk about the Bears' dismal season and how climate change was jacking up cocoa futures. But as the notaries stamped the final page, I slid over a USB drive. One more thing.
Folks.
Insurance. Their eyes widened as the conference room screen flickered to life. Not just the tapes, but the Holy Grail, their own words from that kitchen confessional. Digitized from a hidden nanny cam I'd installed post-juvie. Back when paranoia was my constant companion. I'd kept it. A digital ghost. Waiting for this exorcism. "You framed me," I said softly. The city lights twinkling indifferently below. "For your crimes.
Now.
The world knows." Mom crumpled, sobbing into her scarf. Dad lunged, but security, my security now, held him back. "You little bitch," he spat. "This destroys us. The firm, the legacy, everything. Legacy." I laughed, bitter as burnt roast. "You built it on my back. Consider this the interest." As I walked out, the weight lifted, but so did something else, the illusion of family. Reporters swarmed the lobby, flashes popping like gunfire. By morning, Hayes' heist trended nationwide. Think pieces dissecting the toxic ties of American ambition. Beanstalk, no. Roots and rebels, stock soared. Partnerships flooded in from ethical brands wary of the drama. But victory? It tasted like ash. Holidays came, solitary in my now upgraded loft, turkey thawing in the fridge while I scrolled endless debates. Avery Hayes, hero or homewrecker? Forum split, half cheering the daughter who slayed the dragon, half decrying the ungrateful millennial torching her roots for clout. Even I wavered, staring at old photos. Dad teaching me to ride a bike on Lakeshore Drive. Mom braiding my hair during blizzards. Were they monsters? Or just monsters of their making? Products of a system that chews up the soft and spits out the schemers? The twist hit in January. Frost etching the windows like accusations. A letter arrived. Postmarked from a rehab in Scottsdale. Dad's handwriting. Shaky but defiant. "You think you won? Check the fine print." Kid. Heart pounding. I pored over the merger docs. Buried in Clause 17.2, a dormant LLC. Hayes Legacy Holdings, which controlled 51% voting rights in any Hayes descendants venture. They played me, flipped the board with a shadow entity tied to my birth certificate. A family trust they'd never disclosed. Fury reignited. But so did doubt. Suing meant dragging it all public again. More mud. More mirrors held to my own complicity. I could walk away. Let them rot in irrelevance. Or burn it all. Expose the trust as the fraud it was. Toppling not just them, but the web of enablers who'd profited. In the end, I chose the gray. I met them at a neutral diner off I-90. Formica tables scarred like old wounds. Mom looked frail, Dad gaunt. But their eyes? Still sharp, still scheming. "Truce," I offered, sliding over amended papers, dissolving the trust. In exchange, silence on the juvie frame-up, no memoirs, no podcasts. They signed, hands trembling. "You're a Hayes after all," Dad muttered, almost proud. As I drove into the snow-swept dawn, Chicago fading in the rearview, I wondered, was this justice? Or just another layer of the con? The empire stood, fractured but unbowed. And I, avenger, victim. Air drove on, beans in the trunk. The road ahead as endless and unforgiving as the heartland itself. The truce held, fragile as a cracked mug, through the brutal winter of 26. Roots and Rebels expanded, pop-ups in Austin's food truck scene. A flagship in Brooklyn's Williamsburg, where baristas with sleeve tattoos slung our vengeance blend, a dark roast I'd named half in jest, half in warning. Revenue hit 7 figures. Forbes ran a profile. Avery Hayes, the roast that roasted her roots. I posed for the photo shoot in a leather jacket over a silk blouse. Hair wild, gaze defiant. The photographer capturing that unapologetic Midwestern edge they raved about. But nights were haunted. Dreams of that kitchen. Dad's voice echoing. For the family, I'd wake sweating. The city hum outside my floor-to-ceiling windows, a mocking lullaby. Therapy helped a no-nonsense shrink in River North who chain-smoked menthols during sessions, dissecting my ambivalence toward annihilation. You didn't just revenge them, Avery, she'd say, exhaling blue clouds. You revenged yourself. But who's left standing? Good question. Harlan, my PI, had retired to a cabin up in Door County, but not before tipping me to loose ends. Mom's ladies who lunch, circle spreading whispers that I'd fabricated the tapes for sympathy bucks.
Dad,
Meanwhile, pivoted to consulting, hawking real estate hacks to desperate millennials on LinkedIn Live. His avatar a filtered glow-up, hiding the whiskey bloat. They were diminished. Yes, social pariahs at the Union League Club, their box seats gathering dust, but alive. Scheming in the margins. Spring thawed the ice. And with it, opportunity. A big fish bit. Whole Foods wanted an exclusive line. But with a catch, full transparency on supply chains. Audited to hell and back. Shadow Harvest's books were clean, but the old haze taint lingered. I needed them neutralized, not just leashed. That's when the flip happened. Dad called out of the blue, voice oily as ever. Heard about the deal. Congrats, champ. Listen, we got intel, a competitor sniffing your Colombian co-op, offering bribes to switch. Remember Manny Ruiz? From the old days? Manny Ruiz. The importer who'd fronted my first shipments. Back when I was crashing on friends' couches in Pilsen. Dad had vouched for me then. A rare kindness, or so I'd thought.
now.
It reeked of leverage. What's your angle? I asked. Traffic roaring on the Dan Ryan as I gripped the wheel. No angle. Just family looking out. Meet me at the Billy Goat. Neutral ground. The Billy Goat Tavern. That cursed underbelly of Chicago legend, where journalists drowned scoops and drafts and the no Pepsi curse hung like damp socks. Dad nursed a old style at the scarred bar, looking smaller in his polo, paunch spilling over khakis. Sit, he said, sliding a stool my way. Before you say anything, know this, your mother's sick. Pancreatic. Docs give her 6 months. Tops. The words landed like a sucker punch.
Mom.
Indomitable Eleanor. Felled by cells I couldn't roast away, I ordered a gin and tonic. Hands numb. Why tell me now? Because we're done fighting, Avery. And because I need your help. He pulled a thumb drive from his pocket, same as I'd done to him. This, proof on your rivals, Evergreen Imports. They're the ones bribing Manny. But deeper, they're tied to a cartel scheme, laundering through fair trade certs. You go public. Whole Foods pulls.
But you?
You shine as the whistleblower. Skepticism warred with the hook in my gut. Cartels? In my beans? It sounded like tabloid fodder. But Dad's eyes, those wolf eyes, held no bluff. What's the catch? He leaned in, breath sour. We co-author the exposé. Hayes and Hayes. Redemption arc. Your brand gets the halo. We get back in the game.
Or.
You let Mom die knowing her daughter's a lone wolf. Blackmail. Wrapped in filial guilt. The old flip, from foes to fragile allies. Or so he'd spin it. I took the drive. Walked out into the May sunshine, blinking back tears I wouldn't shed. Home. I plugged it in files. Wire transfers. Grainy photos of Manny shaking hands with suits in Medellin alleys. Legit. Harlan confirmed via text. Your old man's playing with fire. But it's real fire. The dilemma nod. Expose alone. And I'd be the hero, but isolated. The ungrateful, label sticking like tar. Partner with them? It'd heal the fracture. Maybe. But at what cost? Letting them in meant risking the trust. The one I'd just wrested free. I chose controversy. Went public solo. Leaking to the Chicago Tribune with a bang. Coffee cartel. How big brews fund narcos. The story exploded. CNN panels debating ethical consumerism's dark underbelly. TikToks of me roasting beans while narrating the skim like a true crime pod. Whole Foods doubled down. Exclusive locked. But the backlash? Vicious. Dad went on Fox. Spinning victim. My daughter twisted our olive branch into a knife. Mom's prayer circle circulated petitions calling me heartless, ignoring her chemo schedule. Then the threats started. Anonymous calls at 3 a.m. Static-laced Spanish accents. Senora Hayes. Your co-ops are fragile. Accidents happen. A brick through the roastery's window. Scrawled with traitor. Harlan came out of retirement, shadowing me with a Glock in his glove box. This is bigger than family beef.
Kid.
You poked the bear. Poked? I drop-kicked it. Sleepless. I drove to their suburban manse in Oak Brook, the one with the infinity pool overlooking acres of what used to be wetland. Mom answered the door in a silk robe. Kimothin. But her hug? Fierce. Bone-crushing.
Avery. God.
I've missed you. Inside. The living room felt like a museum of my absence. No photos of me post-juvie. Just Dad's golf trophies and Mom's charity plaques. We talked. Halting at first. Recipes for pozole she'd learned from the maid. Dad's failed attempts at birdwatching. Then the raw. We were wrong, Mom whispered. Tears carving tracks in her powder. The frame-up. It was survival. Your grandfather lost everything in '08 crash. We couldn't let it happen again. Dad nodded. Silent for once. But you? You carried it. We owe you.
Oh.
The word hung. Pregnant. I laid it out. The threats. The brick. The fear coiling in my gut like bad espresso. Help me end this. For real.
They did.
Dad's old board of trade pals had cartel ties, not direct, but tangential. Whispers from Miami money men. He called in markers. Greased palms with promises of legit real estate flips in Florida.
Mom.
From her hospice bed. Worked her social web. Charming senators' wives into pressuring the DEA for a task force. By July, raids hit Evergreen's warehouses. Manny flipped state's evidence. And the skim unraveled like cheap thread. We won. Cartel reps slunk back south. Threats evaporating like morning mist. Whole Foods launched our line nationwide. Billboards from sea to shining sea. Roots and rebels. Brewed true. But the victory lap? Tainted. Dad's help came with strings, subtle insertions into my board meetings. Advisory, roles that smelled of reclamation. Mom rallied. Remission whispers turning to full scans clear. But her eyes held that old calculation, gratitude as leverage. The flip again. At a family barbecue, first in years. Ribs smoking on the deck overlooking Lake Michigan, I caught them plotting. Overheard in the study, Dad murmuring to a lawyer crony. The trust's dormant, but with her expansion. Weary in state. Call it legacy protection. She'll thank us later. Betrayals echo. Fainter but familiar. I didn't confront. Instead, I accelerated. Poured merger profits into a new entity, Avery Autonomy LLC. Ring-fencing assets beyond their reach. Hired lawyers sharper than scalpels. Buried clauses in subclauses. And the exposé? I dedicated the sequel book to them, to ENR, the roots I outgrew, a nod that stung sweet. Fall leaves turned, and with them,
The tide.
Dad's consulting gig imploded when a client sued for bad advice. Mom's cancer circle fractured over my ingratitude. They faded, not with a bang, but a whimper. Snowbirds to Arizona. Golf carts their new empire. I thrived. Keynote speaker at South by Southwest. Dating a sommelier who understood bitterness without the bite. Yet the gray lingered. Was I the villain now? Orphaning them in their twilight? Or the survivor? Breaking the cycle? Debates raged online. Avery Hayes, family annihilator or self-made saint. And I let them. Fuel for the next roast. By 27, the grind had polished me to a lethal sheen. Roots and Rebels spanned 20 states. A cult brand peddled in yoga studios and co-working hives. Our pods recyclable. Our ethos rebel against the roast. I was on the cover of Inc. Captioned, "The Bean Queen Who Brewed Her Way to Billionaire." Hyperbole? Sure. Net worth hovered at $80 mil. But the truth?
Power.
The kind that buys silence. Or screams it. The threats had quieted. But shadows lengthened. Manny Ruiz. Post-flip. Vanished to witness protection in Spokane. But not before mailing me a locket his abuela's. Engraved Familia Primero. Guilt gnawed. I'd saved my supply chain, but shattered his. Harlan. Ever the ghost. Warned of blowback. Cartels don't forget. Avery. They simmer.
Simmer.
Like my darkest blend. I doubled security, drones over warehouses, AI-monitored deliveries, and dove deeper into the game. That's when Elena entered. A supply chain whiz from Stanford with cheekbones sharp as audits and a laugh that cut through boardroom fog. We met at a sustainability summit in Seattle. Her panel on blockchain for bananas morphing into drinks at Pike Place, where fishmongers hurled salmon like confetti. "You're the Hayes whistleblower," she said, eyes sparkling over IPAs. Badass. But what's the real tea? Did you really leak your own parents' dirt? Worse, I confessed. The rain pattering on awnings like secrets. I weaponized it. She didn't flinch. By Christmas, she was in Chicago, decoding my ledgers while we decoded each other, nights tangled in Egyptian cotton, mornings plotting expansions over pour-overs. Elena grounded me. Her immigrant grit, Colombian roots, visa hustle, mirroring my own without the baggage. "Family's a construct," she'd say, tracing tattoos on my ribs, quotes from Audre Lorde on Revolution. "Build your own." My own. The words echoed as New Year's dawned, fireworks blooming over the lake like false promises. Mom called, voice frail over the line. "Avery, it's bad again." Stage 4. Come home.
Home. The word choked me.
Elena squeezed my hand. Go. But set boundaries like titanium ones. The flight to Phoenix was turbulence incarnate, mirroring the storm in my chest. Their condo was a sun-bleached tomb, palm shadows dancing on stucco. The air thick with Bengali and unspoken sins. Mom lay propped in a recliner, skeletal under a Afghan. But her grip on my hand? Iron. "You look good, baby." Successful. Dad hovered, fetching ginger ale with mechanical precision. We talked surface. Elena sounds fierce. The business, proud. Finally. Then the ask. We're broke. Avery. Medical bills stacking like Jenga. Alone? For old times. Old times. The frame up. the theft, the flips. I wrote the check $500K. Wired before wheels up, but with terms, full disclosure of all assets, including that phantom trust. No more games, I said, kissing Mom's forehead, her skin paper-thin. Back in Chicago, Elena pored over the docs. It's a web.
Amor.
The trust? It's not just dormant, it's active, siphoning micropayments from your early shadow harvest dividends. They've been skimming 2% since you started. Rage. Cold and clarifying. They'd played the long con, bleeding me dry while preaching family. I confronted via video, their faces pixelated in the desert glare. Thieves to the end, I said, voice even. Sign over the trust, or the world sees round two. Dad blustered. Blackmail. After everything? Mom wept. We're dying here. Avery. Have mercy.
Mercy.
The polarizing word. Elena advocated cutthroat. Freeze them out. You're the future. Harlan. Over whiskey in a corner booth. Mercy's a luxury. Survival's the bill. I chose the abyss. Froze their accounts via injunction. Leaked the skim to ProPublica, the Hayes heist, part 2. The story detonated. Late-night monologues skewering, boomer grifters preying on millennial moguls, petitions for elder abuse charges warring with Forgive the Hayeses. Mom's obituary trended before she even passed. Speculative. Vicious. A digital wake. She died in March. Quietly. Morphine dreams undisturbed by the storm. Dad followed suit in June, liver giving out under the strain. No services. I scattered ashes in Lake Michigan from a chartered yacht. Elena at my side. The waves indifferent witnesses. Grief? It came in waves too, sharp stabs during inventory counts. Dull aches over Elena's paella. But closure? Elusive. The business boomed on the notoriety. Valuation hitting $300 mil. Acquisition offers from Nestle stacking like poker chips. I turned them down. Bootstrapping a foundation. Hayes Haven. Grants for framed youth entrepreneurs. Therapy baked in. Yet the flips haunted. In quiet moments, I'd wonder, did I accelerate their end? Or free us all? Online. The schism deepened, podcasts pitting, justice warrior Avery against cold-blooded Cutter. Elena proposed one night. Rings simple as our vows. Marry me. Build that family we deserve. I said yes. Under a harvest moon, beans roasting in the distance. But as rings glinted, a final letter arrived, Dad's will. Probated late. Bequest, a single warehouse deed in Gary. Shadow Harvest's cradle. Note attached. You own the supplier. We own the sin. Burn it. Or build on it.
R.
The twist. Choice. I burned the deed symbolically. Bonfire on the lakeshore. But kept the land, retooled as a co-op for ex-cons. Brewing second chances. Elena and I honeymooned in Cartagena. Salt air washing wounds. But the debate? It lingered. A bitter aftertaste. Was I redeemed? Or just the next haze? Scheming in silk. 2 years blurred into a rhythm of resilience and reinvention. By 2029, Hayes Haven had funded 50 startups, taco trucks in Boyle Heights, app devs in Detroit's Cass Corridor, all helmed by kids who'd shouldered sins not their own. Elena and I adopted a rescue mutt named Bean. Our Logan Square brownstone echoing with his paws and our plans. A kid. Maybe. Via surrogate. A legacy untainted by bloodlines. The empire? Roots and Rebels went global. Partnerships in Tokyo's vending culture. Berlin's third wave scene, valuation cresting $1 bill. I keynote Davos. Railing against dynastic dynasties, the irony not lost on the tycoons in the front row. Backstage. A silver-haired ghost approached, Harlan. Cane in hand. Grin crooked. Heard you named a blend after me. Shadow stout. Touched. Kid. We clinked flutes of non-alcoholic brew. Toasting ghosts. Any loose ends? I asked. He shrugged. Cartels splintered. Evergreen's CEO did 15 in Supermax. Manny? Opened a cafe in witness limbo. Calls it second harvest. Fitting. Fitting. The word circled as spring greened the parks. Cherry blossoms dusting the 606 trail like confetti regrets. Elena announced the pregnancy. Twins. Girls. Over brunch at that Henry. Avocado toast swimming in hollandaise tears.
Joy.
Unadulterated. Until the call, an unknown number. Voice gravelly Spanish. Senora Hayes. Your co-ops remember. Debts unpaid. Chills. The cartel remnant. Clawing from the grave. Harlan mobilized old contacts. But Elena, fierce Elena, dug deeper. It's not random. Trace the number, burner. But pinged from Oakbrook. Oakbrook. The old homestead. Sold but stalked. Digging unearthed the horror. Dad's lawyer crony. Bitter from the skim exposure. Had sold residuals to narco middlemen. My location. My routines. A final fuck you from the Hayes crypt. The flip. Eternal. Family's poison. Seeping posthumous. I fortified. Private jets for travel. Bodyguards shadowing playdates. But fear festered. A dark roast in my veins. Elena sensed it. Fight or fold. Amor. But don't let them steal our peace.
Fight.
I did. Channeling the old rage. Went nuclear, a documentary. Brewed in blood, premiering at Sundance, raw footage of the skim. The frame-up. The threats. Narrated in my voiceover. Unflinching. It polarized harder than ever. Sundance crowds cheering, empowerment epic, Twitter ablaze with exploitative trauma porn. The cartel backed off. Spotlit like roaches. But the schism deepened, activists decrying my white savior vibe in the co-ops. Boomers mailing hate scraps calling me the daughter who killed her parents.
Killed.
The accusations stuck. Thorn in the triumph. Twins arrived in October. Squalling bundles named Luna and Sage. Elena's dark eyes in miniature frames. Holding them. Hospital lights haloing. I vowed. No sins inherited. But Dad's note echoed. Build on it. Build I did. Turned the Gary warehouse into Haven HQ. A campus of incubators and therapy pods. Murals by ex-gang taggers depicting Phoenix roasts. Elena ran ops. Her blockchain wizardry tracing every beam to ethical eternity. We thrived. A triad against the tempests. Yet the climax crested unbidden. A decade on. In 2035. A whistleblower from Hayes Haven, a mentee-eyed fast-tracked. A kid named Jax with juvie ink like mine, leaked internals. Avery's cutting corners. Same as her old man. Dumping subpar beans to hit quotas. Fudging certs for profit. Lies? Half-truths? In the rush to scale, I'd approved a batch from a drought-hit farm, trace contaminants. Nothing toxic, but undisclosed. Jax, it turned out, was Dad's bastard, alleged from a 90s affair. Groomed by the lawyer crony to infiltrate. Avenge the ruined legacy. The flip. Incarnate. My own blood. Diluted but venomous. Media frenzy. The bean empire crumbles. Hayes 2.0. Recalls hit. Stock plunged 40%. Protests at roasteries chanting, ethics or exit. Elena stood firm. We fix it. Transparent recall. Full audit. But the damage? Soul deep. Jax confronted in the boardroom. His face a funhouse dad. Same jaw. Same sneer. Grandpa said you'd burn us all. Prove him wrong.
Prove.
The polarizing crux. I could crush him, sue for defamation, blacklist his future, or elevate, co-CEO slot.
Public mea culpa.
Rebuild on shared scars. I chose the debate sparker. Resigned as CEO. Handing reins to Elena and a reformed Jax. With me as legacy advisor. Irony intentional. Press conference live from the Gary campus. I bore sins not mine once. Won't repeat. The empire's yours, stewards, not sovereigns. Fallout fractured. Half hailed the humble handoff, half howled cowards cop out. Dodging accountability. Forums exploded. Avery Hayes. Martyr or manipulator? Debates raging from barstools to beltway briefs. Ending? No tidy bow. Elena and I retreated to a Door County cabin. Twins romping in dunes. Bean chasing gulls. The business stabilized. Jax proving a shrewd steward. Blending old cunning with new conscience. I wrote, memoir. Roasted roots, sales fueling Haven scholarships. The cycle bent but unbroken. Was it happy? Tragic?
Both.
In the American vein, triumph laced with thorns, revenge a boomerang that bruises the thrower. As Lake Michigan whispered waves sighed, I sipped a final vengeance blend, bittersweet, and wondered, in the end, who owns the sin?